All right, I'm building up way too much internal hype for Frosthaven Digital. Impossible for me to go to sleep. I also had coffee like less than 2 hours ago. So it doesn't matter that I have to be at work in 7 hours. We are making this video right now. This is hopefully going to be your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about monsters in Frosthaven. This is the Monster Compendium, my tips and tricks for how to face anything in the game. And will hopefully, if you're struggling with Frosthaven or haven't played it yet, or even if you are a veteran, hopefully this will make it easier and you can bump that difficulty on up. So, what are we talking about here? Well, we're going to go over every monster in the game, talk about what initiatives are really important, which abilities we need to keep a lookout for from the monsters, and what abilities we ourselves need to bring to make sure we're countering monsters correctly. It's very, very, very important that when you go to a scenario, you're bringing the right cards for the monsters that you're facing. Also, when you're in the middle of a rest cycle, say you've played 3 turns and you're a 10-card class, you're going to only have 4 cards remaining in your hand to pick from. It's going to be very important that you have at least one good ability to pick in those 4 cards. And so learning, it's every monster class has 8 different cards that they can play each turn, and 2 of those abilities will be shuffles. It's very important to know, maybe not all 8 initiatives, because that's way too much to remember. So for each class, there's going to be like 1 or 2 really important ones to remember. Generally, you always want to remember what is the fastest attacking card each different monster type has. With that said, let's jump into the easiest monsters, the guards. The big, dumb brutes. So the most important cards to note, are there 15 right here. We have Parry and Thrust and Venom Shiv. 15 initiative, they give themselves a shield. One of them they set Retaliate, the other one they will attack you and poison you. A very important change from Gloomhaven to Frosthaven is that this Venom Shiv is no longer a shuffle, meaning if you see guards go at 15 speed and attack with poison, they cannot do that 2 turns in a row, and you no longer have to look out for that 15 until you see another shuffle. All of their other cards, and this becomes the other shuffle, their Strength and Self card. All of their other cards are move and attack, so they have 6 move and attacks and 2 cards where they stand still. This means the fastest Algox guard card, well, any guard, city guard as well, the fastest guard card where they can move and attack is 30. So if you are next to a guard, you want to outspeed 15. Unless you've seen Venom Shiv already, then it's not as important. If you're away from a guard, you want to go in the 16 to 29 range so that you will dodge an attack from Venom Shiv, but you can move up to them and hit them before Hasty Assault goes off. The last thing to note is that their slowest card is 70, so 71 or above, and you can underspeed them. And I think that's at least, a little bit of what we need to know about guards. Anytime you see guards, you're almost always going to see archers with them. Archers have one card that is the know this about them, and that is their shoot foot card. 29 initiative. Now, the nice part about this is with guards, we saw that 30 was an important initiative. With archers, we see 29 is an important initiative. So very easy to keep those together, especially because these monster groups are normally in the same scenarios together. And it's very important to play around this immobilize. You do not want to be playing a 30 or a 32 initiative card where you're trying to move up to an archer and attack them, because if they get this 29, it can wreck you. The very first scenario that I ever lost in Frosthaven was the 2nd level that my group was playing. I was playing a Bone Shaper, and I was playing, I think, Dark Tidings, my 43 initiative, move 4. This card, I needed to move to an escape hex and get out, and the archers got their 29 and immobilized me, and we lost. And I could have short rested and gone faster at 18, but I didn't do that, and I didn't play around this 29 initiative, and we lost. Other important cards to note, they've got a 14 and a 16, and those are their 2 fast attacking cards. The other really important thing to note with archers is that all of their cards attack. Archers are never going to take a turn off, meaning they should, and they're also relatively squishy. We can see on Monster level 3, a normal archer is 7 health versus 12 on an Alex guard. Archers attack every turn, which means that you want to focus them first. They will always attack. They have 2 cards where they stand still. That's not as important to know. Just make sure you're always playing around this 29, and it is a shuffle. So this is literally a card you have to think about every single turn against archers. Moving on to scouts, a much easier monster type to deal with. Now, probably their most important card is this 92 Noxious Blade. Luckily, it happens at 92, so it's not that big of an issue because you will almost always be faster than it. This does mean, though, that if you are facing a scout and you are next to them, since they're not moving with Noxious Blade, don't go at 95. Okay, it looks like Bone Shaper doesn't even have something that can go slower than them. But don't go at 96 on Deathwalker while you are adjacent to... Yeah, Geminate can't go slower either. Just while you're next to a scout, this is their really high damage card. They get +2 on this attack, and it poisons, which is really annoying. But scouts are generally not that much of an issue. 29 is their fastest card. It is a shuffle, so you always have to keep it in mind. But once again, these are 3 different Algox where it's 29, 29, and 30 are basically their fast cards, or like their important cards to keep in mind. And then scouts here do have this 35 where they just move and loot, so there is always the chance, it is a shuffle as well, there's always a chance that they're going to just do nothing, which is really nice. It means that scouts don't have to be your highest priority, because some of their cards, like Rapid Bolts, don't really do very much, and a lot of their initiatives are really slow. Aside from this 29, their fastest card is 40, not a big deal, and Greed. I mean, I guess if you are a more looty player than I am, maybe this Greed is not something you want to see, but for me, I'm always super happy to see this card. Priests, very, very, very important. These are some of the most important enemies to know, because their cards can be devastating, particularly these 2 8s. Now, none of these fast cards on priests are shuffles, is an important thing to note, but they have an 8 speed, move, attack at range, and disarm, an 8 speed, move, attack at range, and immobilize. These 2 cards are very important to play around every turn. This is something that can really, really screw up, especially a Geminate. If you were going to play a move and transform to switch modes and you get hit by this immobilize, that is horrible, because if you don't move, you don't get to do your transform ability to switch forms. Similar with Geminate again, if you were going to attack to change forms, this disarm can prevent you from getting that off. 8 speed is really hard to underspeed with a lot of classes in this game, which means that you need to bring tools to try to deal with priests. The Boots of Speed are very nice tools to have against priests in the speed run. I buy Boots of Speed. I don't use a drifter anymore. I used my initial route used a drifter, and it bought Boots of Speed just to deal with these 8 initiative cards. Then they also have a 9. This one's not nearly as threatening, but they do hit multiple targets with Curse, which is annoying, but at least it doesn't have these super debilitating conditions. The only other thing that's really important to note is that they have that both of their shuffles are heal cards. So generally, you kind of want to see these move and heal cards. You would always rather see the move and heal than the attack with disarm, at least in my opinion. And the move and heal cards are always a possibility. It also means that you'll never see the disarm card twice in a row, but these 2, maybe even 3 cards are very important to play around with priests. You always have to keep them at the front of your mind, and you need to bring items and maybe even your fastest initiative cards just to deal with these. For example, on Blink Blade, I do not generally, if I were to I don't think I actually have a hotkey set for... I don't have a hotkey set for player 4. There we go, that worked. On Blink Blade, I do not bring Borrowed Time as my default Blink Blade setup, but if you're playing a scenario with priests, I would recommend you bring it because it gives you a 2, which allows you to outspeed their 8s, which is very, very important. So if you have those tools available to you, this is one of the most important cards to prep for. This also makes items that can block or remove conditions are especially effective against priests. moving on to the next Algox, enemies that we see much less frequently, the Icespeakers. Their fastest attack happens at 17 initiative. They do have this ice wall where they create an obstacle and you suffer hazardous terrain damage. But that's, I generally don't think of that as being too bad. It is 8 initiative, which is very fast, but they don't hit you that hard. Warding Swipe, they get to pull an attack modifier and they could always crit you, right? So that's something that you generally want to try to play around. And then their highest damage card is going to be this Two-Fisted Strike, especially if they've set both of their elements with Ice Wall beforehand. So 41, that's a card that you're going to kind of want to play around when it comes to Icespeakers. 41 is when they can move and they can hit you, and if they have their elements, they hit really hard. And if it's an elite Icespeaker and they brittle you on the first hit and then hit you with the second one, that is devastating. I guess it's a spoiler. There is an item that you will get relatively early into the campaign that allows you, after you get hit, you can perform a move action. And that item is really good into these guys, especially these elites, because you can move away and dodge that second hit. They also have a stun at 76 initiative, which is kind of important to note, but not too bad. And they have a heal at 12. These guys can be a bit tough to deal with. Their 80 initiative card I don't think is much of an issue. It does disarm, but they stand still and is only range 2, so it's pretty easy to get out of the way of that. Their nothing special is always what you want to see, and it's a shuffle, which is really nice. But the most important things to know are to play around the 41 initiative, try to go faster or slower than it. If they're really far away, go slower than 41. If they're really close to you, go faster than 41 so you can potentially get away. And then this stun at 76 means that you might want to bring some items that can potentially deal with stun by blocking or removing negative conditions. And finally, for Algox, we have the Snowspeakers. And honestly, these are some of the Snowspeakers are definitely more tame than the Icespeakers, I would say. Generally, they attack with most of their cards. That was one thing that we didn't really talk about with Icespeakers. They do have default shield, and the elites brittle with every attack, which is annoying. And they have many cards where they don't attack. One with the earth, they just shield themselves. Ice Wall, they can make you suffer damage, but they also just stand still. And I frequently find that they're not next to me anyway. And then they have several attacks. They have 6 attacks, but still a 1 in 4 chance, like on the first turn you see them, that they're not going to be attacking is pretty good. Snowspeakers, they do attack with most of their cards. They have this 6, which can be really annoying, and it's a shuffle. So this is always a card that you always have to keep in mind against Snowspeakers, is if you are close to them, they can go fast, make you suffer, and push you away. It's a horrible card for summoning classes. This card can be really devastating for a Bone Shaper to face. And you literally, even with Boots of Speed, you cannot underspeed this at level 1, which is very frustrating. Luckily, you don't face very many Snowspeakers, but in general, they don't have all that much else that they do that's all too bad. They do attack with all of their cards except for the 66 Snowdrifts. This is always a card that you want to see, because all it does is immobilize. Snowspeakers, I don't think, are the biggest deal. 22 is their fastest initiative, but their fastest... 18 is their fastest attack. 22 is an AoE, is why I put it here. So they can hit you if you clump up, but the main thing to play around is going to be this 6 initiative that they can pull any turn. And that's it for Algox. All right, moving on to Abaels, and I guess a split second for spoilers if you want to click off. And we're done. I guess we'll just first talk about Scouts. I mean, they're exactly the same as the other Scouts, all of the exact same cards, so that's all that we need to say about Abael Scouts. Very low health, and they have poison on every hit, so it's generally a pretty good idea to just kill one of these guys if you can. It's pretty easy to have an offhand, like just a spare a little tiny action, a half thought to kill them. But what you really need to focus when you're facing these guys are Abael Herders. These things are menaces. I was looking through, trying to pick the important cards to look at, and it's all of them. There's no good card to say you can ignore with these guys. First, we've got their 68. It's a shuffle, so it can always happen. This one you don't really need to You need to know that this is a thing that can happen. The initiative isn't important on it, but they can summon Piranha Pigs, which is annoying. Then they've got Heed the Pigs, which happens at 65, and it's a shuffle, so it can always happen. They attack you for X, where X is the number of pigs on the map. Once again, you don't really need to know the initiative on this. You just need to know that it's an ability that they have. If there are 10 Piranha Pigs on the map, they have a range 11 attack 10. Horrible. Advancing Horde, this isn't the worst card, but it can also summon a Piranha Pig if there aren't any pigs close to them, and they will tell a pig to take an extra turn, and pigs wound you with every attack. Did I pull up pigs? Maybe we should have done pigs first, but herders are really important to know, so we'll look at them first. And then Briny Bristles, this is one of the more frustrating cards from Piranha Pigs. 18 initiative, which is very fast. They move closer to you, and then they tell the closest pig to attack for extra damage, which is very devastating. So this 18 initiative is a very important card to underspeed, because not only are the pigs hitting you extra hard, but pigs also wound. So if they go faster than you, it's like a +2 damage if you weren't already wounded. So this Briny Bristles is really, really devastating. So a very important card to know to play around. You really, when you see herders, you want to go fast, you want to hit them, you want to kill them. You have to kill them before they summon a ton of pigs, and then even if, once they do summon pigs, they're going to move at you and tell the pigs to move at you. They can go at 12 and attack you. This isn't the worst thing for them to do, so it's not that bad, given that it's their fastest card. Generally, I would rather the herder hit me than them command the pigs to hit me. And also, if they get Guide the School, it means that they're not summoning. But this fishnet card can be very devastating. 20 initiative, pulls you, and immobilizes. So against herders, you really want to outspeed 18, and you want to have a lot of movement, because generally herders are going to be on maps with difficult terrain. So you want a lot of movement, you want jump to get up in their faces, and you want burst damage to kill them as quickly as possible. Man, and this Desperate Herd, they grant all pigs within range the ability to swarm you. So like these guys are all about swarming. They're all about summoning a whole bunch of pigs and stacking them up, and then their abilities get absolutely terrifying. When they're strengthening all the pigs, they're immobilizing you so you can't get away. They're granting every pig in range a turn. They're attacking you for 10 because there are so many pigs, or they're just summoning more pigs. Horrible enemies. Always target able herders first. And keep this immobilized at 20 initiative in mind. That's a very important card to underspeed. Pigs, on the other hand, while they can be really rough, a really nice part about them is that, similar to guards, they do not have very many fast move and attacks. So their fastest card, they're 13, they just move and wound. Then they have 2 cards where they stand still. So do not stand next to pigs and let them hit you with these. Which is what's really, really, really frustrating about the herder card, because they pull you in and immobilize you at 20, and then the pigs go right after that and they hit you with no escape, or they hit you with feast and then they heal themselves. So really good synergy for these monsters between each other, and a really important thing to keep in the back of your mind when you are facing them. Another really devastating part about pigs, I really wish they didn't have this card, is their 18 Hasty Assault. This 18 kind of breaks the rule of they can't move and attack you faster than 26. At least Hasty Assault, they attack for less damage. So this 18 is generally one of the better cards to see. They move a lot with jump, which is going to help them get over the difficult terrain. It also means they're going to group up, and AoE is generally pretty good against Piranha Pigs since they don't have the highest base health. So I generally like seeing Hasty Assault, but 18 is the fastest speed we need to underspeed. Other than the 18, though, if they're not next to you, you want to be going after 26, but faster than 31. So 30 is kind of the benchmark speed, very similar to Algok's guards. If you're not next to a Piranha Pig, 30 is the speed you want to be. You never want to go faster than 26 and move up to hit a pig and then let it feast you and heal off all of the damage that you just did to it. All right, I'm just now realizing how many enemies there actually are in the game. So maybe we need to pick up the pace a little bit. And we are moving on to demons. Now, the demons are very interestingly designed. For the most part, they generally have a theme to them, which means that you don't always have to really memorize all of their cards in their initiative. For example, flame demons are all about the fact that they are high shield, low health, retaliate enemies. Meaning, make sure you're bringing your pierce, bring any cards that can grant true damage. They are flying permanently, so maybe if you have a card that can remove flying from something, that can be an effective tool if you have some way to make them go through hazardous terrain or traps or something like that. If you can remove their flying, this is an effective enemy type to do that against. Flame demons, their cards themselves, there aren't very many things to note. They do have a 3 speed card, which is very annoying because you are not underspeeding that unless you're a blink blade, or you get very lucky and have boots of speed. Hasty Assault is just not really something you're going to underspeed. Generally, the card that I try to play around the most is this 30 initiative. So we're starting to see a theme that 30 initiative is a very, very, very important milestone in Frosthaven. This 30 initiative is really annoying because they hit multiple targets and they wound you. And if they're next to you and had fire that they set previously, then they can make you suffer too. Which this can just be a really annoying and frustrating card. The only other thing to note about Frost Demons is they do have 2 cards where they do melee attacks and stand still, which does mean that Flame Demons can kind of be ignored. Also, they can move and make a 4 damage trap, which is another reason that removing their flying can be really good, because a 4 damage trap can kill them in and of itself if you can remove their flying and then push or pull them through it somehow. But yeah, the fact that they have 3 cards where 77 and 49 are both really, really, really easy to dodge, and then they're 8, they never attack, so 3 cards that are very easy to dodge make Flame Demons not the toughest enemy to deal with, but otherwise they are hitting you with ranged attacks, and the wound from Raging Blaze can be really annoying. So not always your highest priority, and you really want specialized tools with extra pierce or true damage to take care of them. Earth Demons. What difficulty is it that Earth Demons start immobilizing with every hit? It's not until monster level 5 that the normals start immobilizing with every hit, but elites will always immobilize you with every hit, which is annoying. Earth Demons are very bulky boys, 17 base health on the normals at monster level 5, which can be annoying. What is not annoying, though, is that they are very slow. So, you probably want to poison these guys. You're going to be hitting them a large number of times. Being able to poison and attack multiple times in the same turn can be really effective against them, just because they have such high health pools that those poisons are going to be very effective. They also have a self-heal at 40 initiative, which heals 4, so poison is very good into them. And their fastest attack is at 42. Basically, all of their cards do attack, except for this 40 initiative, so they're almost always attacking, but they're almost always very slow in attacking. So very easy to outspeed, poison them, try to get them down relatively quickly, but also they don't have that much movement, so it is possible to potentially kite them out and target other things first. So both Flame and Earth Demons don't generally need to be your number 1 priority, but if you don't kill an Earth Demon before they start permanently stun locking you with Immobilize, it can be very difficult to go slower than them so that you can get rid of the Immobilize for the following turn. Frost Demons, once again, are kind of a demon that can be ignored a little bit. They are lower health, definitely lower health than Earth Demon. I feel like they have more health than they did in Gloomhaven, but I could be wrong about that. With permanent Retaliate. So the Retaliate's the main thing to play around here. With Frost Demons, you want ranged cards. It's pretty simple. They're also quite slow. They have 2 18s. This 18 Immobilize card can be really annoying. That is something to keep an eye out for. If you're trying to run away, you need to underspeed 18. But their other 18 is a card you always love to see. All they do is move and shield, so just ignore them for the turn. I always love seeing Ice Barrier. Other than that, they have a 38 to move and hit you with Hasty Assault, but everything else is just a really slow card. This Frozen Shards hits really, really hard when they have Ice at 58, and it's a ranged attack, which is annoying. But both of their shuffles are these Cold Claws, so you'll see this card very frequently where, just don't stand next to each other, but it's a 78, so you're very likely to be outspeeding this anyway. And so these are one of the easiest enemies in the game to play around. Just, if you need to run away, go faster than this 18 so they don't immobilize you, and hit them with ranged attacks. And they're not that bad. Night Demons did get nerfed quite a bit from Gloomhaven. Now, all attacks hitting them have disadvantage, which is really annoying because you miss them all the time. Like, not only does every attack targeting Night Demons have disadvantage, but it feels like there's an inherent passive that every character adds an extra miss to their deck when you're facing them. They do have this Hasty Assault at 4, but for the most part, Night Demons are a lot slower in Frosthaven than they were in Gloomhaven. I don't remember all of their Gloomhaven cards, but they only have one super fast card with this Hasty Assault at 4. Other than that, this 15 is a card to keep in mind. Generally, you're not going to outspeed the 4 ever, even with Boots of Speed. So this 15 is the card you really want to play around, because they move a lot, they hit pretty relatively hard, and they make you suffer. So 15 is a very good card to play around. 35 is a very important card to keep in mind as well. You do not want to stand next to a Night Demon and go slower than 35, because they don't move, but they attack twice, which is devastating if this hits you. So do not go slower than 35 while next to a Night Demon. The Frosthaven, there was a nerf to their invisibility card. Instead of being like 7 or 9 speed, now it's 37 speed. So it's very easy to go faster than these guys. And this is one of the first classes we've seen. This is also an effective strategy against Frost Demons. Being able to consume their element can be really, really effective. If you can go faster than Frost Demons and consume their ice on frozen shards, this could be through any of your cards that can potentially consume ice, but that's not something every class can do. But there are items, something like the Circlet of Elements as a starting item can consume any element and change it to any different element. So you could do something like consume their ice and switch it to fire, and then maybe they damage themselves with this ice barrier. You can consume Night Demon's dark and turn it into light, and maybe they'll potentially curse themselves. So even though like Circlet of Elements isn't always the best item, into heavy demon scenarios, I actually do like to bring it. And then there's another item that is relatively easy to acquire that can block an elemental consumption, and you can use that to block this invisibility on Night Demons, which can be very, very, very important. Other than that, you know, they can go at 22, 26. This 15 is the real card to keep in mind against Night Demons. Try to outspeed the 15 if you're trying to go faster than them and kill them. 15 is the threshold you want. Don't stand next to them if you're going slower than 35. Night Demons are much more complicated than these other 3 guys. Sun Demons, unfortunately, there's just not really like a great way to deal with Sun Demons. I don't think. They have permanent shield. They also have the same health as Frost Demons, which makes them very difficult to deal with, because they have a lot of shield and they have permanent advantage. So you're really going to want to focus Sun Demons first. And there is just no consensus on what they're going to do. They can go really fast and heal. Their fastest attack is at 36, and they have 2 of them, so at least it's relatively slow, but they target all adjacents, so they'll move in. They have flying, so you can't use traps or difficult terrain or anything like that to disrupt them. And then they can go all the way down at 95, and they can hit everything in range. This is a very important card to be able to dodge the light if you do that Circlet of Elements strategy. And they also can self-heal themselves with Vicious Opportunity, and then the Ray of Warmth is a self-heal as well. So denying light from these guys is really, really important. And unfortunately, there are not very many classes that really use light. So Circle of Elements is a very good item into these guys. Honestly, I can't tell you. I don't have much of a tip against Sun Demons other than just hit them hard and go faster than 36. Hopefully. Wind Demons are very, very, very potentially frustrating enemies. The most important thing to note are these 2 43 cards that they have, because both of them can disarm. One of them always disarms, and the other one will only disarm if there is wind. So 43 initiative, Wind Demons disarm. Also, 9 initiative, not something that you can always play around. Most classes can't play around 9 initiative. They can eat the wind and go invisible. So It's very, very difficult. I feel like there are a fair number of classes that use a lot of wind in Frosthaven, which means that you might accidentally be making wind for the wind demons, which can be very, very, very frustrating. I'm thinking of 4 classes. I guess that's maybe a little spoilery. I'm thinking of more than one class that at least can generate wind in some way. So this into the air, into thin air card is really, really, really annoying. At least it is reduced damage and they don't move, so they don't hit you too hard, but the heal will remove wounds. The invisibility means they're going faster than you. You can't hit them. I hate wind demons. Wind demons are awful. One interesting part about them is 43 is their slowest card, so it is very, very easy to underspeed them. But generally they have a lot of move and they can pull you in with this Tailwind, which is their shuffle. So this is the card you'll see the most frequently, and both of their shuffles set wind, giving them disarm or invisibility. They can also go at 2 and underspeed you. I really wish I had a strategy for you for wind demons, but I don't. You need to make sure you bring Pierce into them. You generally need to focus them so that they're not disarming your whole party. And I mean, they have both ranged and melee attacks, so wind demons can actually be quite difficult. I don't love seeing wind demons. Speaking of, we start from easy, and we just keep getting worse and worse when it comes to demons. Chaos demons. Luckily, you don't see these guys very frequently. Unluckily, they're awful. They can go at 1 or 98, so there's no comfortable initiative range. They only have 2 fast cards, with 1 and 14, but they also have a 20, so that's not very much advice. But you're never outspeeding 1, and they also have a 14, so I guess try to underspeed 20 and hope that they don't get these. Just kill Chaos Demons first. They have quite a bit of health, and they muddle with every hit, which is super annoying, but at least they don't have any shield, they don't have any retaliate. They also don't have any self-heal, so wound can be effective against them. That's not true. They self-heal with light on White Claws, but they don't set light unless they do Arcane Explosion, which is one of their shuffle cards, so it's always a possibility, but their self-healing is not something that comes up very frequently. I feel like Black Tendrils, their invisibility comes up more, which it shouldn't, but maybe it's just that I like to play classes that set dark. 51 initiative, they can go invisible. Focus Chaos Demons first. Unfortunately, the strategy for Chaos Demons, Sun Demons, and Night Demons, and Wind Demons is to focus them first, so just don't play levels that have all of those monsters in them. But I would recommend Chaos Demons first, if you have to. On to Ice Wraith, another enemy. These are bulkier, pretty significantly bulkier than the Sun Demons were, with permanent shield on the normals and permanent retaliate with range on the elites. These guys are really, really difficult for summon classes. If you're playing Bone Shaper, there's a persistent loss that can ignore retaliate. If you see Ice Wraiths or Frost Demons, or Flame Demons, you need to be playing that loss where your summons can ignore all retaliate. Ice Wraiths, at least their cards you can relatively play around. Unfortunately, their slowest card is 95, so it's very hard to underspeed them. It will shift them between normal and elite, which is weird. So, like, normals are not weaker than elites. They're relatively similar. They just have different things that they do. The elites always wound, the normals always curse. The normals have shield, the elites have retaliate. But they can always change forms. They have a bunch of self-heals. I think they have 3 self-heals with Shift Form, Restore Essence, and Renewed Aggression. So wounding them is not necessarily a super effective strategy. They also have this annoying card where they go invisible, but luckily it's at 59. So sometimes you like to see this card, but it's very frustrating when they go invisible and then next turn they go at 95. Ice Wraith, though, they don't attack with every card, because they have this 13 where they stand, 13 where all they do is heal themselves and potentially shield if they have ice, 59 where all they do is go invisible and potentially strengthen themselves, and then there's 16 where they don't move, but the normals attack at range. The elites are just melee. So the 16 I find relatively frequently. I don't mind seeing the 16. This invisibility is probably one of the more important cards, and then just keeping in mind, if you're trying to go for a kill, you might need to outspeed this 13, because the heal and shield self is very, very annoying. I hate when I'm going for a kill and they pull this on me. And the self-healing makes these guys pretty unpredictable. But Pierce and some way to avoid retaliate, which generally is going to mean poison, is pretty good into these guys. All right, on to Unfettered. I assume Ancient Artillery are Unfettered. I mean, they were in Gloomhaven, but they look Unfettered-ish to me. I'm thinking of a few Unfettered levels that have Ancient Artillery. We'll count them. So there's one thing that I generally have in mind against Ancient Artilleries, and that is the range of 5. Now, unfortunately, this is not a hard, fast rule that is always going to work, but Ancient Artillery do attack with every card. 6 of their 8 cards are range 5 or less. Concussive Burst is range 5, but because it has this triangle pattern, it can actually hit in range 6. And Long Shot hits in range 7. But both of these cards, Long Shot and Concussive Burst, happen at 46, so that makes them relatively easy to remember. You know, I just think like 40s, mid 40s. They can hit at range 6 or range 7, but they are both reduced damage attacks. So you always want to stay outside of range 5 of Ancient Artilleries, unless you're going for the kill on them. Unfortunately, this 17 initiative card can be really annoying because they get the 2 shield. Just something to know that happens. But generally, stay outside, stay range 6 or further away, and you won't ever get hit super hard. But you might get hit with this Concussive Burst and Immobilized, which can be very annoying. But when you're ready, go in, and then hopefully they don't get the 17 and get shield when you are trying to outspeed them and kill them. Range 6 or more. Flaming Bladespinners are very interesting because they're really annoying, but also they just don't do anything. This 12 initiative card, if there's fire, they can make you suffer too, but that doesn't feel like something that comes up all too frequently to me. They have a couple cards where they set fire. They have 3 of them, and both of their shuffles set fire. But I don't know. For some reason, I feel like this defensive blades never goes off and makes me suffer. So 12 initiative, they just stand still and shield. 17 initiative, they just stand still and shield, and they get extra retaliate. They also permanently have retaliate and permanently have multi-focus, and they can't be wounded. Which is annoying, but they have 3 cards where they just don't do anything. Flame Jets, all they do is move up to you a lot and make you suffer 1. So generally, Bladespinners, they just want to move next to you and make you hit them, so just don't hit them melee. They can be poisoned, which is very good for trying to take reduced damage from their retaliates. Unfortunately, once you get to higher difficulties, elite Flaming Bladespinners with their 4 retaliate, you're going to have to hit them like once or twice, which means that push is very effective into these guys. Push is very good because if you push something outside of the range of its retaliate, which they just have melee retaliate unless they got their 17 speed card, but even still, with just a push 1, you would only suffer 2 retaliate if they played this Firestorm card. So they do have cards where they can do things, but they're all relatively slow. 33 is their fastest initiative where they will move and attack you. Spinning Charge is always a card to keep an eye on because they'll target the furthest thing away from you, which can be frustrating, and attack everything along the way. But it's only 1 card, it's not a shuffle, and it happens at 68, so it's relatively easy to avoid. And I feel like most of the time Flaming Bladespinners just do nothing, and so you just need to make sure you bring the right cards so that you can poison them, you can push them away, and if you're a Bone Shaper, bring the loss that allows your summons to ignore retaliate, because summons absolutely hate Bladespinners with their multi-target attacks and their infinite retaliate. Speaking of hating things, I hate Bolt Shooters. I hate Bolt Shooters so much. The main thing I hate about Bolt Shooters is that they always have tons of focus, tons of multi-target, which makes just determining where they're going to move and who they're going to hit really, really annoying. If you have like 3 characters that you're controlling, or maybe some summons in there with you, and there are 3 Robotic Boltshooters on the board, it's really frustrating trying to pick all of their targets out. Most important card is this 78 Focus Fire, where they will hit 1 target with all attacks. Also, interestingly, the elites have the exact same base movement and attack at all levels as the normals. I think it's at all levels, I'm pretty sure. They just have 1 extra target. So the elites don't actually hit harder than the normals unless they get this Focus Fire card. They also have a 91, so it's very hard to underspeed them, but they do stand still with that card, but it's range 4, so they're most likely going to hit you. And then this Repair Drones, I feel like it always comes up at the worst time. So if you're trying to underspeed a Robotic Bolt Shooter and kill it, you need to underspeed 16. These guys are also immune to wound, but they are not immune to poison. They don't have very much health, though, so they're not the most prime target for poison, but if you're playing a scenario that has both Flaming Bladespinners and Robotic Boltshooters, I would always target the Boltshooters first. Boltshooters attack with all of their cards except for this 16. So most of the time, Boltshooters are going to be attacking, whereas Flaming Bladespinners have those 3 cards where they won't really do all too much. And for the most part, we're sitting at very middling initiative. They have a 22 to go relatively fast and hit you, but otherwise it's in the 40s, the 50s, the 80s, the 90s, 78. And this Focus Fire card is very important to not get hit by. One thing that I love against this Focus Fire ability well, I won't say what kind of item it is. There is an item that after you get hit, you can perform a move ability, and so if a bolt shooter moves in to be exactly 5 range away from you, and then it attacks you with the first hit of Focus Fire, and you use said item to move out of their range 5, they cannot hit you with the following attacks. So that is a very good item into these guys. That is also a very good item into Ruined Machines, because they have the same kind of ability with Self-Destruct. 93 initiative, it's a shuffle, so it is always in their deck. It is always a possibility that they will draw every turn. They move up to you, they attack. If they were able to land the hit on you, then they will self-destruct and make everything adjacent to them suffer trap damage. This is not a targeted ability, so even if you're invisible, this will still damage you. They can't target you with the attack if you're invisible, but if they hit your ally and you're invisible next to your ally, then you will still suffer the self-destruct damage, which made me lose a scenario once, so I never forget that. Ruined Machines are really annoying because they just don't do anything. They're 85, they barely move, they barely hit. Their Signal Jam, they move and they muddle and they hurt themselves. Their Latch On, they move and they don't attack. Their Hasty Assault, they move and they attack for less. Their Nothing Special is like absolutely nothing special. The only thing these guys do is the self-destruct. So you always have to play around the self-destruct every single turn, which is really annoying, which is why that item that lets you move after you get hit is really good into both these guys and Robotic Boltshooters. An automatic bring if you have that item available to yourself. Otherwise, their fastest attack is this 29, the Fuel Leak. And kind of keep in mind that they have this 42 card where they don't move, but they will attack you extra hard. I think this is an attack +2. And immobilize. So you do not want to get hit by that. And Ruined Machines are in like 50% of scenarios. So you will see these guys all the time. Play around self-destruct every turn. Every turn you have to be thinking about self-destruct. And they're immune to poison. Luckily, they're not super high base health, so that's not the biggest deal. AoE is good into these guys because they are very swarmy enemies. And finally, Steel Automatons. Kind of fits with some of the themes of some of the other things, where like Flaming Bladespinners just don't really do much. Ruined Machines just don't really do much. Steel Automatons just don't really always do that much. 10 initiative, where they get infinite shield, so this card says don't hit me. Body Block, where they move up and they get extra shield and retaliate, so this card says don't hit me. And Clobber at 76, you're generally going to be faster than 76. Make sure you outspeed 76 every turn against these guys. It's not a shuffle, but I always think go faster than 70 against Steel Automatons, because they will hit you and stun you if you're next to them. And if you get clobbered by them, you deserved to. Other than that, there are other cards. really not all that much. So given that 3 out of 5 of their cards are relatively easy to avoid, these guys don't need to be your focus. Generally, they're if it's a kill all enemies scenario, steel automatons are the last thing that I am killing, because they're not all that threatening. You can kind of just run away from them. And this 10 speed shuffle, I feel like it happens all the time. And then their other shuffle is really, really slow. So their shuffles are not super impactful cards. But they do have a lot of base shield, and they're immune to disarm and poison. The immune to disarm is really annoying. There's one class that I like that has disarm in multiple different places, and I always forget that I can't disarm these steel automatons, although they do have multiple cards where they don't attack anyway. The immune to poison is really annoying. You need Pierce to deal with them. That's that. And we are getting near the end. We've got Lurkers, we've got Undead, and then we've got the miscellaneous. I didn't pick cards for these guys. All right, so on to Lurkers. Starting out with the Clawcrushers. I hate these guys. I really hate these guys. A really something I underrated for a long time is the Impair on elite Lurker Clawcrushers. That can be absolutely devastating. Impair is a really, really, really difficult condition to deal with, especially later into a campaign, when you have really good items. This Impair can be really devastating. And Lurker Clawcrushers in general are high shield enemies. And as their name would suggest, with Clawcrushers, they like to crush your armor. So they've got Crush Armor and Smash Armor. Both of these cards make you suffer for the value of your shield, so it basically ignores all of your shield. Even if they miss, that means that they still hurt you for the value of your shield, so you do not want to shield in front of Clawcrushers. And if they have Leaf, you suffer double the damage instead. Important to note, if you do play a shield for the turn, you can discard that card at any time. So say a different monster is coming up and hitting you first, you can be shielded for that attack and then discard your shield and then not suffer the crush armor damage from these Clawcrushers. But in general, against Lurkers, Mindsnippers have Pierce, Lurker Soldiers have Pierce, and Lurker Clawcrushers go through your shield. So Lurkers are not enemies that you are shielding up against. Those are not cards that you need to be bringing, cards or items that you need to be bringing against Lurkers. Also, in the Clawcrushers, they're so annoying because they have an 11 and a 13, both very fast cards where they give themselves extra shield. This does mean that as long as you're not standing next to them, this 13 speed card is very important to note because they will immobilize you if they're next to you. They can hit multiple targets, but they can't move. So try to never stand next to Clawcrushers because they will go really fast and punish you. And for the most part, you kind of just ignore them and try to kill all of their buddies first. But I am okay if you want to target an elite Clawcrusher to get rid of the Impair that they always give you, because that is really, really annoying. Other than that, they're relatively middling from 31 to 60. All of their attacks are from 31 to 60, except for this 13. So just do not let them stand next to you. If they are next to you, you need to save your fast cards to get away before they hold you in place and have all of their other Lurker friends come and hurt you. They do hit relatively hard with cards like this. Earthen Blow is +2, and they poison you a lot. So the negative conditions that these guys output can be really annoying, but they can be kited out and they can be ignored whenever they get their fast cards where they just shield. Mindsnippers, I absolutely hate. Mindsnippers are enemies that you need to bring specific tools for. Most important, I would say, is this 18 speed card, because they are multi-target. This is a multi-target 18 speed move and attack with disarm at range. What? 18 speed is very fast. This is a really, really, really important card to underspeed. You cannot go at 20 and try to play an attack to kill these things, because every time you do, I swear, every time you go at 20, they will go at 18 and disarm you, and disarm all your friends. generally when there are Mindsnippers, there aren't a ton of them. It's kind of an enemy where there's like one Mindsnipper most of the time, or if there are multiple, they're spread out. There are a couple scenarios I can think of where they're grouped up, but shields that can, or items that can prevent negative conditions or remove negative conditions can be really good, because if you can block a disarm before it comes into you, that can be nice. Also, a way to remove their dark so that this paralyze doesn't stun you makes this go from a really scary card to not very threatening, because it's just base attack 2 on the normals, and these are level 5 lurkers, so not very high base damage on their cards, even for very high level monsters, as long as you can ignore this stun and get around this disarm. Those are the most important things. Their hasty assault, they do go fast and hit you at 10, and they hit multiple targets, and if they're elites, they muddle you, which is annoying, but generally this hasty assault is preferred over their beguiling thoughts. Other than that, I feel like they play this retaliate card a lot at 6 speed. Most of the time this just says don't hit me. Another really cool thing with lurkers is that no lurker, in any of the lurkers, all of them, none of them can heal, which means that wound is very, very, very effective into all of them. So you love wounding these Mindsnippers, especially because they don't have super high base health. Same thing with Lurker Soldiers and Lurker Clawcrushers. I love to throw a wound on a Clawcrusher and just ignore them for a long time, and then come up to them once I'm ready to deal their remaining damage. On to soldiers. There's not much to note about soldiers. They can go really fast and wound you and shield themselves. It's not the most important card. They do have this focus strike. This is probably the biggest card to keep in mind. 38 initiative. They can hit you multiple times. This is another case where the item to move away after you've been hit once is really, really nice to dodge the subsequent attack, but it's only one extra attack, so it's not the biggest deal in the world. They can go at 23, so they're not the fastest things, and then just a whole bunch of middling initiatives, 28 through 61. Most all of their cards are just move and melee hit, and they attack with every card except this 11. So Lurker Soldiers, you can prioritize them, well, I would always prioritize Lurker Mindsnippers and Lurker Wavethrowers before the Soldiers. With Lurkers, I feel like it's always you kill the Mindsnippers or the Wavethrowers first, then the Soldiers, then the Clawcrushers. And on to Wavethrowers and why we need to kill them so badly. These dumb aid from below cards. It's both of their shuffles, so if you leave them alone long enough, they will summon a horde of lightning eels. They will make difficult terrain around themselves and just be frustrating. There are basically two strategies. One, you kill these guys first so that they don't summon a ton of things, or two, you just completely ignore them and let them stay really far away from you and spawn lightning eels in places that don't matter because they're so far away from you and lightning eels can't leave water. Both of those strategies work. So if Lurker Wavethrowers are really far away from you, target the Mindsnippers first. If the Wavethrowers are really close, that's when things can get a little bit dicey. Also, elite Wavethrowers immobilize with every attack, which is annoying because they do attack with all of their cards except for their summons. So attacks and those immobilizes come out pretty frequently, but their base damage is very low. Aside from this 60 card, which is a melee move and hit, but it's reduced move, so it's very possible to go faster than 60 and kite them out. Everything else is like reduced damage. This is a level 5 Lurker Wavethrower, and the normals have one. Okay, it's only 2 cards where they hit for 1, but then 2 cards where they only hit for 2, and their powerful attacks hit for 3 and 4. So even at high levels, Wavethrowers aren't dealing very much damage to you. So another important technique potentially to use against them, if you can get them surrounded by obstacles and walls and difficult terrain and bodies, then they can't summon. And so if they're just hitting you with low damage attacks, then you can kind of just keep them trapped in place. And whenever they draw their summon cards and all of the hexes adjacent to them are taken up, they just can't do anything, which is quite nice. That is always a good technique for summoning classes. Maybe using like a push to push them into a wall, and finding some way to kind of surround them. Any items that can give you, like, that can create obstacles or something like that can always be a good thing to bring into summoning classes. And finally, the Lightning Eel, not technically a Lurker, but Lurker Wavethrowers summon them, so they're important. Very weird enemies because they treat water as corridors and non-water hexes as obstacles. So they have to stay in the water, and they are almost entirely melee. They do attack with every card, but 7 of their cards are melee, and they can't leave water. So just stay 1 hex away from water and you're good. Bring ranged attacks anytime you're facing lightning eels, if possible. And the only thing you really need to keep an eye out for is this 16, which is a ranged card, but it is not a shuffle. So if you're surrounded by a whole bunch of lightning eels and they can draw this electrical pulse on you, you are in trouble. The other thing to note is that they have 2 really slow cards at 67 and 82, where they will consume light to stun. So some way to deny light from them, it can always be really effective. Other than that, if you find yourself surrounded by lightning eels, you can't deny their light and they're stunning you, you are going to be in trouble. Lightning eels are never really much of a threat unless you are playing a scenario that is overwhelmingly covered in water. Then they can be a big problem, especially if they can just always reach you. These things can be really, really annoying, and you need good AoE to take them out. Luckily, they're low health, and most of the time, you just ignore them. Alright, onto the undead. I feel like these enemies, except for the frozen corpses and the living bones, the living dooms... Okay, the living dooms and the Harrower Infesters are underutilized, I think, in my opinion. I feel like it's possible to go through the whole campaign and not see either of them. That may not be accurate, but frozen corpses is where we will start. Really, the only thing to know about these guys is you need a little bit of pierce. Just 1 shield on the normals, 1 shield on the elites, but the 3 retaliate on the elites is really annoying. That's really, really annoying. Just don't face frozen corpse elites and you're good. They really don't have anything of note that they can do. Their most annoying card is most definitely this Freezing Embrace, where they just go fast, they move a lot, and they brittle and immobilize you. They go at 23, so 23 is an initiative to keep an eye on, to keep in your memory. Other than that, they just move and melee, and a lot of their cards, they don't move very much. Ice Swipe is only a move 1. Thawed Strike is only a move 1 unless they have fire, but then they do hurt themselves if they pull it, and they have 2 Thawed Strikes. So I guess 3 of their cards are only a move 1 or move 2. And then they've got a few cards where they move extra, but they just don't really do all that much. Ice is an element that's relatively easy for us to steal from them to prevent the brittle. I feel like this cold stat brittle almost never goes off, especially because they don't set very much ice. Okay, that's not really true. They set ice with 3 cards. And they have 2 cold snaps. I'm really surprised that I feel like this brittle never ends up happening to me, but I do feel like it never ends up happening. 23 is their fast card, but their fastest attack isn't until 39. So it's very, very, very easy to outspeed their attacks. They're a little bit bulky, but generally frozen corpses are not the worst thing to deal with. No ability to heal themselves, so wound is effective, is a nice effective way to get through the shield, and especially the shield and retaliate from the elites. Harrower Infesters, I feel like I never see them. They're very low health enemies that just have a lot of retaliate, and they're fast. They're like so fast. 2, 7, 7, 16, and 16. So just like you're not going to outspeed them, but both of their 16s, they stand still. So try not to be next to them. This 7, they'll move and they'll attack you, but it's not the biggest deal in the world. I don't feel like there are ever tons of Harrower Infesters. You're only going to be facing 1 or maybe 2 at a time. So even though this is a move fast, move in and attack you with poison, it's not the end of the world. They do stand still a lot. Stand still and shield and retaliate, stand still and stand still. So, and stand still with this 7 speed. So half of their cards are going to stand still, which makes them quite easy to kite. And then they can hit pretty hard in the 30s. So Harrower Infesters, just really weird enemies. You can either try to kite them out and ignore them, or just try to burst them because they don't have any shield and they're low health, but they do have the retaliate. But it's just a melee retaliate unless they get their 2 speed card, which you're never going to underspeed. Living Bones. Everybody knows Living Bones. I mean, these guys were probably the most frequent enemy in Gloomhaven. You see them all the time. A bunch of really annoying things. Both of their shuffles are really fast and they heal themselves, which means wound and poison are not the most effective. 12 and 20 are the cards to look out for there. This 20 is definitely, it's both their fastest attack and it heals them, and it's a shuffle, so it's something that can come out every turn, which is really annoying. The Eternal Life, very frustrating if you're trying to kill them and you can't underspeed a 12. Other than that, though, you really need to keep Focus Stabs and Power Slash in mind. So both their early and their late initiatives are important cards to track for the Living Bones. Both their late initiatives are not the shuffles, and both their fast initiatives are the shuffles. So you never want to go slower than 81 while you're next to a skeleton because they can't move. So generally you always want to go faster than 81. And this Focus Stabs, if you don't have a way to play around it, such as high shield, good retaliate, or the ability to move after you've been hit, Focus Stabs can be quite rough, unless it's a scenario where the monsters add push. There are a couple scenarios where the monsters add push, and then the skeletons come up with Focus Stabs and they attack you and they push you away, and then they don't focus anything, which is really nice. Other than that, they have innate multi-target, which can be really annoying. So most of the time, Living Bones you want to kill relatively quickly. They've got a little bit of shield and low health, so they're not the hardest to deal with. It's just frustrating when you were planning to kill one and they go at 12 or 20 and they heal and shield and you aren't able to pick up the kill on them. Living Doom, another enemy that we just don't see very frequently. They keep up with the theme with Harrower Infesters, where it's 17, it's 16 on the Harrower Infesters, but they stand still, attack you and immobilize and set extra retaliate. So it's like the exact same card between Harrower Infesters and Living Dooms on this Hateful Spikes. They also have this pull of the grave where they go at 98, so they are after you unless you're long resting, and they will bane you. They attack for very little though, so you always want to bring a heal, some sort of self-heal, some sort of heal allies. Or if they hit you with this, you might just be taking a long rest the next turn, even if you didn't really need to. But a long rest is always a possible way to get rid of this Bane so that it doesn't dominate you. But bring heals against these guys. You also want to always focus them at least a little bit, because they summon living spirits based off of their amount of health, their current hit point value divided by 5 and rounded down. So if you can get them to 4 health and they pull this card, they literally do nothing because they cannot summon 0. But if they are 15 health and they pull this card, they will summon 3 living spirits, which you do not want to deal with. So 2 shield makes it really annoying. So Living Dooms, you generally want to target them first and get them low, and then they can kind of be ignored and kited out. Because even if they get 98, you just need to heal on the next turn. If they get their 17, they're not moving. Oh, whoops. And their other cards, they just move and they don't hit all that hard. They actually hit harder than I remembered. So maybe just kill the Living Dooms first. Just kill the Living Dooms first. But they're going to go pretty slow. 32, as long as you're not standing next to them when they get their 17. And finally, Living Spirits. A couple really annoying cards here. First off, Icy Glare at 67. If there is ice, they can stun you. Very, very frustrating. Living Spirits are very low health, high shield enemies, meaning wound is the very first thing you always want to think of when you see them. Unfortunately, they do have this self-heal at 75 initiative. 75 is very slow, so it is a card you can potentially play around if you see that, you know, this guy, he only had 2 health and he was wounded, so you thought he was going to die to the wound. If he draws Leech Warmth, maybe it's worth trying to throw an attack to deal 1 damage to get that remaining hit point out before that heal comes out. And the really annoying part about this Leech Warmth card is that it sets the ice, which means the next turn they can potentially stun you with Icy Glare. This stun can be really frustrating because when you face living spirits, there are a large number of them most of the time. I feel like it's normally more than like 2 or 3 living spirits. And so even if you can kill one of them to prevent the stun, there's generally going to be another living spirit that you weren't able to kill, and then that one will get to stun either you or your allies, and you're in for a bad time. Other than that, they attack with every card except for this Angry Howl, but that's not a shuffle. And their initiative is rather middling. 22 is their fastest card, but they can go nice and slow at the 75. So keep in mind that you need some way to block ice to prevent stun, or some way to remove the stun. And then other than that, you really want to wound them and just hope that they don't draw the heal card. All right, this is taking longer than I thought it was going to, and I'm starting to get tired, but we're nearly there. First, so these are all the remaining enemies. There are 2 other monster types that we're just not even going to talk about, because like I just don't even know what they do, because we never see Sawvast in the game. So if you face those, good luck. But we have Imps, Snow Imps and Black Imps, exact same decks, just different stats between them. Black Imps will poison you with every attack and have slightly more health. Snow Imps will brittle you with every attack. So into both of these enemies, there's only one card, but if you have an ability that lets you heal yourself every time you've been hit for the turn, that card is amazing into these guys. So that you don't get those negative conditions stacked on yourselves. But one of the most important things to keep in mind is this 43. It's the shuffle for Imps, so you will see these 43s very frequently, and it's move, attack, consume any element for multi-target. So you do not want elements. When you're facing these guys, you want no elements out. Don't make elements. Don't let them eat the extra elements to hit extra targets. Generally, they don't deal that much damage, but the negative conditions they apply with their poisons, with the curses from Dark Charm, and the brittles from Snow Imps, giving them extra targets on their 43s are really annoying, and they're shuffles, so you always have to deal with them. Other than that, they can just stand still with phase out and be impossible to hit, and they set an element for themselves, which is very frustrating. But you know, hopefully most of the time they'll just play this tip of the scales card where they stand still and maybe they muddle you. Other than that, they do have one hard hitting attack where they deal extra damage at 76, and they can heal themselves up. But Imps, for the most part, are, well, no, they're always very low health enemies. I guess there are Forest Imps too, which are low health, always curse and have shields, so you need some pierce into them. But these guys, for the most part, you generally want to target them first, and you don't want to leave any extra spare elements laying around. Burrowing Blades, high shield enemies that wound you with every hit, but high shield, relatively low health. They cannot heal themselves, so wound is a good technique into them. And they have 3 cards where they stand still. Descend, 75 initiative, they just go invisible and you suffer damage if you're next to them. 85 initiative, they're going to hit you extra hard, extra hard if there's a leaf, but like just don't be standing next to them at 85 and you're fine. Or Aura of Fear, where they'll muddle and curse like everybody, and they have infinite move and they run towards the furthest thing away, but also like they're not attacking. So 3 cards where they don't attack, meaning you can kind of employ the strategy of just wound them and then ignore them, try to run away from them. They'll probably hit you with 1 or 2 of these tunneling slices since it's their shuffle, where they target the furthest thing away. They attack everything along the way. They deal reduced damage and they wound everything. A little bit frustrating and annoying, but if you just bring some heals to remove their wound and bring the ability to wound them, you wound them, ignore them for a couple turns, and then just try to burst them through their remaining shield once they only have like 5 health left or so. They're also like much easier to deal with at lower level when they only have 2 shield. When do they get they get the 3rd shield at level 4. So that's frustrating, monster level 4. But if you're just playing normal difficulty, monster level 4 means level 7 or 8 characters. So you're going to be strong enough to be dealing 10 damage in a single attack. And 8 damage, maybe. With the lucky attack modifier pull. On to Deep Terrors. Deep Terrors can be really frustrating. Really, mostly just 2 cards to keep in mind. This Terrible Growth is really, really annoying. 96 initiative, range 6, which is further range than most of their other attacks. Deep Terrors can never move, and they are low health enemies with high Retaliate, although not too high. Only 2 Retaliate and 7 health means it's pretty easy to just be retaliated once and like hit him for 3 and hit him for 4, something like that. But ranged attacks are good into them. You want to stay really far away from Deep Terrors until it's time to kill them, and when it is time to kill them, you want to move in fast and do so. Their fastest attack is a 54 with this Ray of Haste. So generally they're very slow, and their shuffles, both of their shuffles, are this 60 speed card where they just attack in a straight line. So if you just stand like 1 hex to the side of them, well, not 1 hex, but 2 hexes. How can I... This is... You know, if you've got Deep Terror and then this is the hex next to them, you just stand in this hex over here. And when they go for a straight line, they go this way or this way, and they miss you. So this is a very easy card to avoid. It's their shuffle, so it's the card you'll see the most frequently. Just hope that they never draw this Terrible Growth, which means that you want to stay outside of range 6, which is a lot of range. So you basically want to kill these guys first if you can, which means you need a lot of move, you need a lot of jump, because a lot of the time these guys love to hide behind obstacles, which is really, really annoying. So either like infinite range or a lot of move with a lot of jump, and the ability to burst them, maybe, you know, hit them once and poison them, and then hit them a second time and try to kill them. Not the toughest enemies to deal with, but if they get this Terrible Growth, you know, if they get this turn 1 on a scenario, maybe just restart the scenario. Other than that, they can immobilize at 75. Oh, and one other thing, you don't want to stand next to them, because rooted fear, they attack you and then they attack you again. Disruptive Frenzy, they attack you and then they attack you again. The second hit is at disadvantage, but still, you don't want to be hit multiple times, and being hit and disarmed makes you feel like an idiot at 75 initiative. So a lot of things where you don't want to be standing next to them until it's time to kill them. But their range is not amazing. Range 4, range 4, range 3, range 3. And then this straight line is easy to play around. But these 2 cards, the 75 and the 96, are the ones to keep an eye out for at range 5 and range 6. Hounds are a very, very, very easy monster to play around. Only 3, but it's really just 2 cards to keep in mind. This 6 initiative Gripping Teeth, they go really fast. They move up to you and they immobilize you. And they are retaliate enemies, so them moving in and retaliating on you, immobilizing means you'll be retaliated on, so even if you hit them with range, you get retaliated, which is frustrating. And then this Pack Hunting, where they go at 19. So if you are facing Hounds, you need to bring like 3 cards that are 19 or faster, because if you get surrounded by Hounds and multiple Hounds are getting this +2 bonus, if there are any enemies adjacent to you, they will melt through your health bar. Interestingly, they also have 2 26s, which are just this 19 card but worse, because it's literally the exact same. So 4 of their cards have the exact same stats on them, but the 2 19s are the shuffles and get bonus damage if you're adjacent to their enemies, or adjacent to their allies, adjacent to any other enemies. They also can go at 7 and muddle you, but that's not nearly as big of a deal as them going at 6 and immobilizing, or 19 and just killing you. Oozes, everybody knows Oozes. I mean, if you're playing a Haven game, you know Oozes. They suffer damage themselves and they split. Luckily, they're not enemies that we face super frequently, but they can be really annoying, so kill them quickly. Wound can be really good, because any damage that one ooze suffers when he splits, his offspring will suffer the same damage as well. So sometimes you can just like walk up to an ooze, hit it relatively hard and wound it, and then just ignore it for forever, because the most dangerous thing for them to do is to split. But if a 5 health wounded ooze splits, then he and his children are only having like 2 health, and then they'll split one more time and they're just gonna die. So wound and just like a hard hit in the beginning is a good way to deal with oozes, and then you can kind of try to stay away from them. Unfortunately, they do have this feed card where they will heal themselves, so wound is not always a guaranteed victory. And if you are facing a large number of oozes, 36 is the speed that you need to underspeed to make sure that you can get away. Unfortunately, they have a lot of move and they have range with Hasty Assault, but their other cards, Plasma Ward, they stand still, Toxic Eruption, they stand still, and Calculated Strike, they only have move 1. And the splits, they obviously stand still. So this 36 is like the card to play around if there are a large number of Oozes that you can't kill. But the general strategy is going to be hit the first Oozes that are on the map really hard so that if they split, everybody's low. And then if there's a large number, just play around 36. Polar Bears. I really like Polar Bears because they just have 3 important cards, and it's 13 and 14. The 13, unfortunately, is a shuffle, so you have to keep this in mind every turn when you're facing Polar Bears. Always be thinking, I need to outspeed 13, because 13 and 14 are very frustrating cards where they go fast and they hit you actually really hard, and they always wound, so you need healing into them. Their 80 means that you cannot go slower than 80 next to them, so do not long rest next to a Polar Bear who's going to get to attack. Because this 80 will rampage straight through you. Also, they can impair, which is really annoying. All of their other cards, except for Hibernate, where they just stand still and don't really do much, are just, middling initiative moves and attacks, except for Full Force, where they stand still. So most of the time, you just need to worry about 13 and 14, and other than that, you're just dealing with a melee enemy running after you and trying to hit you. Rending Drakes are very similar to Polar Bears. They're really, really similar to Polar Bears. Oh, Polar Bears also can't be stunned or immobilized, which is really, really annoying. The immobilize, I always forget, and then I'm trying to kite them out with immobilize, and then I get punished. But Rending Drakes, very similar to Polar Bears. No defenses, no retaliate or anything like that. They wound with every hit. And instead of 13 and 14, they have 12 and 13 as their fast cards to keep in mind. I have no idea what the thought process was on the design of this card, where they go at 13 speed, can hit you, move, and hit you. This 13 speed is very important to play around, but I mean, so is the 12. They're both pretty bad, but the 13 is literally twice as bad as the 12 if they're already next to you. So Rending Drakes, you need healing, you need to go really fast, and just like the Polar Bears, don't long rest next to them, because they will stand still and they will hit you, and you will cry. They can also go at 6 and keep themselves alive and strengthen themselves, which is really frustrating. If they go at 6, you were trying to kill them, and then next turn they go at 13 and they hit you twice with strengthen. Every other card, similar to the Polar Bears, is just a move and melee, except this Venom Glands, where they attack multiple targets at range and poison. Rending Drakes are tough. Luckily, they're low health enemies, so you can always focus Rending Drakes first. They also have a lot of movement. And Rending Drakes are generally paired with Spitting Drakes, not always, but most of the time. And Spitting Drakes like to kind of stand still. They have the 6, just like the Rending Drakes do. They're 89, it's 4 range, so a really, really late 4 range stun. Important card to keep in mind. And then their Venom Glands, they stand still at 4 range. So you want to stay outside of 5 range, away from Rending Drakes. And hopefully, ideally, the Spitting Drakes will be far away from you. You can stay outside of range 5. The Rending Drakes will go fast and move a lot with their Nothing Special or their Dangerous Fury or their Hasty Assault or their Swift Claws. They'll move a lot and come up to you, and you can kill the Rending Drakes before you get to the Spitting Drakes because they stand still, so just stay outside of that range 5. And then other than that, they just have a whole bunch of ranged attacks, and they muddle, but they're very slow. 32 is their fastest card. And we're through. Hopefully, I was able to share some valuable information, to share at least the mindset that I go into when I'm facing enemies. Try to remember their fastest cards. Remember just general strategies. Which monsters do I need to focus first? Especially because frequently you're facing a whole bunch of the Lurkers together or a whole bunch of the Unfettered together. And most of the time you can have a general strategy of what you need to kill first. But sometimes the scenario effects will mess things up and force you to focus different things first. Also, the monsters you're facing make the items that you bring to scenarios very, very, very important, because a lot of the more niche sounding items in Frosthaven can counter certain enemies really well. Like all of the demons and the snow imps and the imps in general Circlet of Eyes so that you can remove their, or not eyes, Circlet of Elements so that you can remove their elements so that they don't get those effects, can be really, really powerful. Same with Ice Wraith and the Living Spirits getting rid of their ice. So I think that's all I have for you. It is now 2 a.m., so I am out of here.